Good morning, everyone. We are at the beginning of Lent. Perhaps you've got a great plan in place for how you're going to live Lent this year, or perhaps you are still figuring out. I know some years when I'm getting ready for Lent, I have all these ideas of things that I want to do, and I put all of them in a sort of a basket in my mind. And then as we go through the first couple days of Lent, I take them out one by one, and I see where we end up. If you'll indulge me for just a moment, I want to share with you the way that I am personally approaching Lent this year, what's going into my thought process. Like you, I have been shocked to see Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And I think it's a poignant reminder that all war is a tragedy. Like you, though, I have been edified to see the resolve of the Ukrainian people and their leaders. So one thing that's in my mind as I prepare for Lent is an instruction that a Ukrainian Catholic bishop, Yaroslav Pires, sent to his priests at the beginning of the invasion. I'm just going to read a couple excerpts from it that I've been really dwelling on. This is what he told his priests. Strictly adhere to the duty of remaining in the parish that is entrusted to your pastoral care, and do not leave the faithful, especially in the current threatening situation. If necessary, be prepared to receive refugees and provide other humanitarian assistance. The priest is called to reject fear and to be a witness of Christ and his truth. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. So the question that I'm asking myself as we approach Lent is, how can I prepare myself to live this sort of dedication? Or, to put the question a little more pointedly, how can I live my Lent now so that I would be ready to sacrifice my comfort, my possessions, my reputation, even my very life, for the sake of the gospel, the people, and the country that I love? The reason Lent has special disciplines is because it's kind of like a basic training for the battles that we face in life. And with the disciplines, that is the things that you add or the things that you take away, the point is not simply just to deny yourself and to see how much willpower you have, but rather to help you live the ordinary things of life with more love. And when we live the ordinary things of life with more love, we are then ready for the extraordinary demands of love if they come our way. To focus our attention as we journey through Lent to Easter, we're starting a new message series called Your Grace is Enough. Grace is God's help. Grace is God's gift. Grace is God's free gift. It's a share in his very life. You cannot earn it, nor can you make yourself deserve it. All you can do is accept it or reject it. Now, on paper, that all sounds well and good, but if you're like me, maybe sometimes you're stubborn. Sometimes I don't want to ask for help. And sometimes I really don't even want to receive help. I think in my old age, I'm beginning to sound more like a toddler. I can do it on my own. Especially with technology in the office. But you know what? I can't, and neither can you. Because we're all broken. We all need God's help. That is the help. We all need help. We need the help of others, and we need the help of God. The title from this series comes from a song that we are going to sing at the end of Mass by Matt Maher. Your Grace is Enough. Matt Maher wrote this song in 2003 when he was experiencing a sort of spiritual darkness due to burnout. For him, he said the key that he needed to remember was that no matter what was going on, no matter how he felt, God's grace was in fact enough. He said God's grace is enough because that is what he needed to hear. And I think this is the lesson that we need to learn again and again. No matter what is going on, God's grace is enough. Between family stressors, career woes, financial difficulties, and personal struggles, life can be overwhelming, and sometimes it can leave you feeling defeated. For instance, a few days ago I was in the office and I heard some news I didn't like. Now, mind you, it didn't actually direct my life. It didn't actually impact my life directly, and I couldn't even control it. But once I heard this bit of news, and it doesn't matter what it was, I felt my anxiety. It was like a switch was flipped, and my anxiety began to rise. And then that night I was in bed, and I woke up at 3:30 on the dot in a worry about this thing I couldn't control. Maybe that's a trap that you've fallen into yourself. And the reason we fall into this trap is because we think that fixing things is entirely up to us. Newsflash, it isn't. God's grace is the answer. And that's the point of the series. We need to trust more and more in him and less in the things that are not him. And that includes me and you and our money, our talents, everything else. In fact, that's the lesson of today's gospel. Jesus is fully divine, means because he's God, and Jesus is fully human as a man. As God, Jesus could have vanquished the devil and all of his temptations with the blink of an eye. But he chose to feel them in his humanity to show us that we can overcome our temptations, provided that we trust in God's grace and not our own strength. As a man, Jesus was tempted. But how did he not fall? Through grace. And the devil's three temptations are sort of a paradigm for the temptations that seek to trip us up as we walk along the path to a better life. And we heard them and we know them well. We heard the devil say, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." He's tempting him with sensual gratification, gluttony, lust. It's all included in there. In the second temptation, the devil shows him the kingdoms of the world. And he says, all of this I will give to you, all of the power, all of the glory, if you worship me. So he's tempting him with power and riches. We can think of greed. And then the third and final temptation, the devil takes Jesus to the top of the temple, and he says to him, throw yourself down and let God catch you, if you're God. If, he doesn't know, if you're God. So he's tempting him with pride. St. John, commenting on these temptations, he calls them the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Now, the remedies for these temptations are the pillars of Lent. These are the things that help us remember that God's grace is in fact enough. Fasting, almsgiving, and prayer. Fasting, or self-denial, teaches us self-control. Almsgiving, that is, giving to the poor, teaches us detachment from material things. And prayer teaches us to humble ourselves before God and to rely more and more on his grace. Taken together, these spiritual disciplines teach us to trust less and less in ourselves, because God will always give us what we need. We saw that was how Jesus responded to each temptation. God will take care of me. God's got it for me. In fact, that's the biggest thing we want you to get out of this series, and the biggest thing that we want you to grow in this Lent. That it's not up to you, that you don't need to do it on your own, because God's grace is enough. Let me end with a funny prayer that maybe I've shared before. It goes like this. Dear Lord, so far I've done all right. I haven't gossiped. I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been greedy, grumpy, nasty, selfish, or overindulgent. I'm really glad about that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And from then on, I'm going to need a lot more help. So, as we enter Lent, as we get out of bed, let's remember that God's grace is enough.